Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, our series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My distinguished guest today is a man of many parts, a truly Renaissance man with more achievements and credentials than I could detail in any brief introduction. He's been a distinguished diplomat, an academic, a chancellor of a university, a vice-chancellor of a university. He's been editor of a financial newspaper, an economist by training, and with a profound and deep commitment to secularism, to peace, and to the larger agenda of a modern India. I'm delighted to welcome Professor Khusro.
Thank you.
Professor Khusro, you have done so many things, worn so many hats. Has there been a favorite hat?
Well, Jack of all is the kind of title that fits me perhaps, and I don't know whether I'm a specialist in any particular area. My interests are quite wide, but certainly national economic development is one of the, partly because of my training, one of the areas in which I have been interested over time.
Well, you've been an economic journalist, you've been a vice-chancellor of a university, you've been a diplomat, you have been very active in the issue of Kashmir and the resolution of the conflict, in track to diplomacy between India and Pakistan. You lead the Aga Khan Foundation, which works in areas of development.
Right.
Surely that's more than being a jack of many trades.
Well, yes, I have a wide range of interests, no doubt, but I wish I could go into depth in many of these matters. I do feel that in many respects I have a superficial view of things, but maybe as the discussion might show, in some categories and in some areas I have gone into some detail and depth.
Well, most recently you have the Finance Commission report that you have authored has been released, and seemingly somewhat at odds with the prevailing mood of liberalization and reform inspired by Keynes. You have held out the need or the imperative for government to go in for substantial public saving without worrying about the fiscal deficit. In terms of, as the Americans would describe, economics 101, what is the logic of this?
This commission found itself in a predicament. All the 25 states of the country were in a revenue deficit. Their expenditures, current expenditures, were more than their current intake, their revenues. So what does the Finance Commission do? Does it distribute deficits? It is expected to distribute surpluses from one to another. We face this question now, living in an era of recovery and with an attitude of the states favorable to better fiscal management, plus our own recommendations for structural reform in the coming period, with which the President of India has made us responsible, we felt that we have ample resource coming for redistribution from the center to the states. We now notice that we have been able to give, or at least promise to give, or recommend the central government to give to the states, and recommend to the states to raise their own resources in very substantial volumes. And we are now very hopeful that although there may be some bickering among the states, I didn't get much, I didn't get much, he got more, he got more. The poverty-oriented states got more, and we, the better performers, did not get more. That is possible. They are saying that. But I think some kind of balance has to be brought in, and I believe that our recommendations have generally been acceptable, and I think they will do a lot of good to the country.
You've recently done a book on the poverty of nations, and the President of India has paid it the great tribute of comparing it with Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, a classic. What is the basic thesis of this book?
Actually, I don't know whether he meant that kind of thing. He may have even quoted me when I used Adam Smith's dicta at various places when the market economy was being discussed, which I believe is one of the major methods of getting out of poverty. Not the only method, but without paying attention to the market forces and following some of the advices given by Adam Smith, it will be difficult with a controlled system and with a rigid authoritative economy to get out of poverty. Superficially, yes, you can force good housing or ample housing. You can force some kind of employment. But in the ultimate analysis, it turns out that this employment is a superficial employment. People appear to be employed, but they actually aren't. They are working half-time, and their productivity is very low. So in this book, one started taking stock of the various major systems of economics prevailing in the world in the last 150 years.
The dominant sort of discourse today is about reform, liberalization, globalization, a whole range of sort of associated terminology.
Yeah.
Do you think that this process has been generous, kind, successful for India? Is it being so?
Improvements have come, no doubt. And I don't think we could have continued any longer with all those huge controls that existed up to 1990 with price control and foreign exchange control and wage control and capital issues control and this control and that control. As someone remarked, one of the economists, I think, that what to produce, where to produce, when to produce, how much to produce, by what technology to produce, etc., etc., all decided by bureaucracy. Now, I'm quite convinced that that system would not have gone any further. Already we were in a crisis, or three crises, by the year 1989, 1990, a crisis of foreign exchange, a crisis of supplies, shortages, and a crisis of the budget.
This sort of is circumscribed. It's an ideal economic model. This sort of assumes the trickle-down effect that is being talked about a great deal.
Yeah.
Do you have faith in this trickle-down effect?
To begin with, one didn't have faith in this for good reasons. And the reason was that countries which have only 2.5%, 3.5%, 4% growth as India had, faced with a 2.5% growth of population, would have a net growth of a very small magnitude, say 1%. And India for 40 years had a 1% per capita growth. This is not good enough for taking off. On the other hand, there are economies of the Far East, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Korea, and all these, with a 6%, 8%, 10% economic growth, with a 3% population growth, they had a net growth of 6-7% per annum. That was good enough to trickle down, involve the poor of the society in production process. In India, the poor never got involved in the production process in any mass numbers, and so now that India is achieving 7% growth, 6% growth, and now that Indian population growth is around 2%, a controversial 1.9, but a non-controversial 2%, the net growth of India per capita is now for the first time above 3%, 4% per annum. That will trickle down. So the days of trickle down have now arrived, I think, and the future of Indian society in this respect is good.
An area of your activism, in a sense, beyond your, perhaps if I could describe it as beyond your professional calling, has been your interest and your passion and your work at the predicament, the problem in Kashmir and the relations between India and Pakistan. You have been very actively involved in the processes of track 2 diplomacy. Where and in what ways, how do you see the situation which seems quite intractable in Kashmir unfolding? Do you have a dream?
Yeah.
What is his dream?
Yes, one constituted this group called Nimrana. 10 Indians and 10 Pakistanis meeting together, and we have had 18 meetings over the last 12 years, trying to see how the two countries can resolve their problems of the problems of mutual interest, and how a better time can be had by both countries. The other group was Doordarshan Kashmir, which some of us started. As one, through these groups, as one has been in touch with Kashmir to a considerable extent, and very frequently visiting, meeting all kinds of people, all political parties, administration, the opinion makers and lawyers and academics and whoever, one feels that one knows a little bit about what is happening. On the strength of that, I would like to say that the Kashmiris on our side, on India's side, have long decided that going to Pakistan is not for them. 30 years ago, it was not like that at all, and you never know. A considerable number of people and a proportion of people would say, "Acha, that's okay." But what has happened is, first, the collapse of the two-nation theory, not noticed by all, but it is there, and it has been noticed by many. This means that the idea that religion is the basis of nationality and not homeland, and the other large group saying homeland is the basis of nationality, not religion. Well, this was settled in favor of those who said religion is the basis, and the country was divided on this, rightly or wrongly. Maybe it was divided. 50 years have passed by, and now it is quite clear that while a new state has been formed, Pakistan, and one wishes it well, it is our neighboring country, and I do believe that a strong neighbor is very important for India, and for self-respect and for decent living, and inshallah it will happen. And these are permanent neighbors. When we are not there, when our grandchildren are not there, and their grandchildren are not there, the two countries will still remain. So we might as well be comfortable with neighborliness. So one wishes well to that country, and but not at the cost of our own self-respect and so on. Those are other issues. Now, what has happened is, today the two-nation theory is dead.
But is it death on both sides of the border, or only on this side?
No, all over the world the two-nation theory is dead. There's no nation, maybe Israel or something, maybe an example, some people cite that, but there's otherwise no nation in the world which bases its nationality on religion. All passports in the world, all nationality formations are on the basis of homeland. And I tell my Pakistani friends, even the Pakistani nationality is now based on homeland. The Pakistani Hindu, the Pakistani Parsi, the Pakistani Christian, they don't owe any allegiance to Islam, but they owe allegiance to Pakistan. And on the strength of allegiance to Pakistan, they get their passport, their nationality. So, same with us. I am a Muslim, but will the Saudis give me their nationality because I am a Muslim? No. I would have to be born there, barring some exceptions. Will the Pakistanis, I told my Pakistani friends also, will you get the Saudi nationality if you wanted because you are a Muslim? No. So it is not religion anymore, it is homeland all the way.
Do you have the faith that if these were forthcoming, assuming that that would to some degree significant enough win over the hearts or at least the minds of a significant section of the Kashmiri people. But the popular perception in India is that while that is a requisite, that a great deal of the ferment is because of cross-border terrorism, it's because of what Pakistan is feeding into the valley, and that is not going to be as easily resolved until in some manner Pakistan retreats from this undeclared war, shall we say. You have been interacting substantially.
That may remain so. That's a different problem, or the international or neighborliness, the problem between two neighbors. But I am now talking of the domestic chaps, our people here in the valley, in the state of J&K on the whole. Now it's almost ready to adopt or be with India, provided these things. I can't say that one of these items will trigger the change, but a set of these items, autonomy, counter guarantees. They say counter guarantee can't be given because there is a resolution by the cabinet to that effect. But what about another resolution by the cabinet to an opposite effect? Then they say 25,000 people unemployed can be absorbed in the valley. Why not? What's being done? And what about 1,50,000 people, other people unemployed, who can be absorbed, should be absorbed in the rest of India, like the Biharis or the Maharashtrians can serve outside their state, they are absorbed. What about the Kashmiris? And you know, schoolboys are talking about autonomy and they are talking about counter guarantees. I think this is a very serious matter. But here is an opportunity of giving the people their due, I think. I believe, however, that that international issue that you raised, I think solutions on our side are readily available. They are waiting only generosity and whatever. Edmund Burke once said in the British Parliament, you know, dealing with in the times of the American colonies, magnanimity in politics is not seldom the truest wisdom, and a great empire and little minds go ill together. In our case, a great country and little minds go ill together. So we has to settle this on basis of magnanimity. It's doable. On the international, which is my last point on the Kashmir thing, yes, we don't know how that will be resolved, this basic issue. But I believe, Rajiv, that a matter as complicated, as multidimensional, as emotion-raising as Kashmir cannot be settled in times of tension. It will have to be settled in easier times. So, a chap like me advocates a three-stage solution. Stage number one, let the Kashmiris on this side, Indian side, get their better political rights and economic rights within India, Kashmir. On the other side, there is much more room for political and economic progress, and let those Kashmiris get their own dues. Phase one. I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, who can say? But first phase. Second phase, let there be, when tensions subside, meanwhile SARC and SEPTA and these other things made progress. And can you imagine Pakistani business offices in India and Indian business offices in Pakistan, trade, commerce, some investment, normalization. Second phase, mobilities between the two Kashmirs. I don't know how many years, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the third phase, when in a normalcy period, with some of these progresses accomplished, Indian government, Pakistani government and the Kashmiri people sitting together may be able to evolve better solutions. And by the way, there can be many. It could be the line of control becomes the international border. चलो भाई ठीक है, अब तो ठीक चल रहा है ना, आ रहे हैं, जा रहे हैं, तिजारत कर रहे हैं और सब कुछ हो रहा. That's possible. Second thing, maybe other alternative solutions may be there. For example, what is it called, a condominium, where India and Pakistan, imaginative solution, may not be possible, may be possible. India and Pakistan guaranteeing certain securities and certain enlargement of the constitutional rights of the Kashmiri people, and these two governments working in unison in times of friendliness and more peaceful existence. Other solutions are also possible.
Did you see Kargil as most Indians seem to have seen a betrayal of India's initiatives, a betrayal of Lahore, a betrayal perhaps of Track 2 too?
I do see it like that. I was on the bus diplomacy visit which Mr. Vajpayee had arranged. I did go to Lahore, and I don't know people who know things much better. People say that Mr. Nawaz Sharif knew the Kargil plan, and he ditched us, and he was less than true when he was with Mr. Vajpayee. I don't think so. I always have a doubt about my own view on this. But as I saw it at that time, when Mr. Nawaz Sharif says in the Lahore speech, quoting Mr. Vajpayee, "Hum jang na hone denge, hum jang na hone denge." And when Mr. Vajpayee says in his second day speech, quoting Ali Sardar Jafri, saying, "Tum aao गुलशन लाहौर से सबा बरदोश, हम आए सुबह बनारस की रोशनी लेकर, हिमालय के पहाड़ों की ताजगी लेकर, फिर उसके बाद ये पूछें कि कौन दुश्मन है." I think there was on both sides an element of sincerity, and something was in the offing. I am informed, I don't know how credible this is, that there was a Kargil plan even in his days. The previous general of the army brought this plan to the notice of the civilian government. It was discussed thoroughly and rejected. It was rejected. And to that extent, Mr. Nawaz Sharif knew that there was such a plan, Kargil, not implemented, not to be implemented. Then Mr. Musharraf, the General Musharraf, I think it's on his initiative basically and his army friends that the Kargil episode was launched. It did not work. And the big result of that was that the line of control, which was a controversial matter and the international opinion did not recognize it as a credible point. But once Pakistan crossed that in Kargil, not only Mr. Clinton and the United States by sending General Zinni to tell the people on the other side, don't do that, get away from it. And then the international opinion also say, how dare they cross the border? The validity of the border got established for once. And I think that is the success of Kargil from the Indian point of view, with much disaster and much loss of life on both sides.
It is the internal politics of what is happening in Pakistan that is critical to the ability of any government, Pakistan, a dictatorship or not, to be able to discuss peace, quite apart from arriving at a negotiated settlement.
Yes, I can't really, nobody can forecast the future and what shape things will take there. मगर मुबारक हो, जैसी भी जनता चाहती है वो करे. However, I think we will have to wait until these incursions really come to an end, and they had better come to an end. Incidentally, my own view of inside Pakistan is that it's not all one there. There are, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people or more, I think, who do not like the new happenings between India and Pakistan. And incidentally, one has seen with one's own eyes that in Karachi, in Sindh, in Balochistan, and perhaps in the frontier, people are much more favorable to improved relations with India. That's very true. It is only in the Punjab that there is less of that kind of sentiment. But many people, because of their self-interests are involved. Their families are here, and their chaps here, they have their families there. It is their need, and that's why when Mr. Vajpayee went in his earlier, what is it called? When he was foreign minister, and he opened up the visa system and so on. Until this day, everybody remembers this, and he himself regards that as one of the major achievements of his foreign ministry, foreign minister regime. So I think things are not bad. I dislike this, that everybody thinks of India-Pakistan relations as relations between two governments. And it's not so. It has to be, and it is relations between the people. For the time being, a lid has been put on that idea, and only government to government, dictatorship versus democracy and all that. But I think you know, whenever Pakistanis and Indians meet in a non-official, on a non-official plane, matters are very different, whether they are Hindus or Muslims or whoever.
Professor Khusro, you've had, maybe it's simplistic, but you know, perhaps one could describe economics as your profession, and issues of Kashmir and peace as your vocation, your work with the Aga Khan Foundation, where you work with many development projects and many development issues, as sort of a senior statesman, perhaps. What do you see as your mission now?
I don't know whether I have a single objective at this moment, but if there is one, it is in respect of improved relations, seeing improved relations and doing, if possible, anything that could be done to improve the relation between the two countries. And one is not without hope. I'm basically an optimist, but still I'm not without hope that something big will happen one of these days. That's my desire. But if I have to work, I would like to work in inter-community relations improvement in India. I have found recently a trust called Foundation for Inter-Community Relations, FICR, FICR. And in FICR, lifting up in a small way the educational system at the school level in particular, and health system in the country for rural populations and the poor, and then women's uplift. Working in a small way for these areas through this foundation, of which I would see branches spreading. I have founded one in Hyderabad also, extension of this organization. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, as the Chinese proverb says. I should have started this when I was young, but it's too late in the day. Maybe it's not too late in the day. Others will take up the mantle. But improvement in inter-community relations on the one side, and improvement between our two countries on the other, would be something I'd like to work on.
Professor Khusro, thank you very much. That's been a great privilege.
Thank you.